little post VP debate action. Hope everyone's doing good. We'll give everyone a chance to come in. I think you could tell by the title of my video, I was right. Oh, flipped. Sorry, little alarm there. We'll talk about it here. We'll get people in, but hopefully you all enjoyed the debate. There was one thing I was slightly wrong about, which we'll get to, but pretty much my calling of how I expected the debate to go was spot on, in my opinion. Now, we'll see if people agree with me or not. That's always up to subjective interpretation. I wish I was doing this at home, because what I try to do is I'm trying to give my thoughts on the debate on X as they go. But the way that works is not just saying when I think a point's good or bad, but also trying to say what specifically they're saying. And then when I go over the debate, I could look at it. But because I'm only able to film on my phone right here, I can't bring up the actual thread because I'm using my phone. So we'll just go off memory, and I'll give kind of an overview. And if people have specific things that they want to talk about, that's fine. So my prediction for the debate was that I thought Vance was... My voice is what? Can people hear me? Is the audio okay? My voice is off? Is that true? Can someone let me know if the audio is okay? Hopefully the audio is desynced. I sound all right? Okay. It's out of sync? Okay. All right. All I could do is just roll with it. I don't know exactly what's going on. So my prediction was that I'd been saying for over a week now, I don't understand where all the hate of J.D. Vance came from. I could understand people that didn't like what he said negative about Trump in the past. There were maybe some specific policies that I think was things that you might not have liked about him. But all these smears initially, he was the wrong choice, he's weird. This was all just garbage. Anyone that was picked by him, should I restart the video? What do you all think? All right, how about this? I will immediately restart this video, and hopefully that syncs everything up fine. Fair enough? So for the 49 people watching, oh, it's synced now? Okay, we'll keep going then. Okay. Sorry about that. So, but I knew Vance is a very smart guy, and he has the talent stack to be a great debater. This was obvious. He's very smart. He's good at coming off things off the cuff. He's been good when he's gone into hostile media environments. I knew that he would be very good. I predicted that I thought Trump would falter to Kamala Harris in that first debate. I think I was right about that. Maybe other people disagree. But I was very confident that I thought Vance would win. I thought Walz would do better than Kamala Harris, but I thought that he would easily lose. That was my prediction, and that's exactly what happened. Vance illustrates that he is one of the most competent people I've seen on a debate stage at national level politics in my lifetime. He was absolutely tremendous. Now, he might not be to everyone's style. If you liked watching Trump in the 2016 primary debate stage, where he's just riffing and he's making fun of Jeb Bush and he's making fun of Rosie O'Donnell and stuff like that, that's not Vance. He's not going to bring that. But for the people that Vance needed to connect to, he did everything right. I would give J.D. Vance an A. I don't give him an A+, but I give him an A. I thought that he did phenomenally. And we'll talk about all the things specifically that happened and why I think he did so well. But that was absolutely what I predicted. I think Walz does slightly better than Kamala Harris. I don't remember the grade that I gave Kamala Harris, but I would put Walz slightly ahead of her. I would give Walz like a C. Anywhere from a C- to a C is what I would give Walz. I thought he comes across as more fluid than Kamala Harris, which isn't saying much, but he's still stilted. You could tell he was nervous. You could tell he's stilted. And when it comes to the interactions, he fails in many levels of things that he needed to accomplish. He did have a couple moments. I thought his best part was when he got to talk about abortion. I thought he had some inroads there. And I'll be honest, I'll give some advice of things that I think were left on the table that Vance could have really used it to maybe bring home an A+. But it's easy to Monday morning quarterback. When you're in the moment, it's hard to give a perfect performance. And I thought Vance did as well as anyone could have. I just think he did tremendously. Do you think Walz came across as human and likable? We'll talk about it. The one area that I was slightly wrong was I said the moderation would be bad, but I didn't think it would be too bad. It was worse than I expected. It was really bad. And I thought Vance did a pretty commendable job. I hope that it comes across to the people that were watching. Clearly, the people that don't want Trump to win are going to go, yay, Vance looks like a crybaby complaining about the moderation. But I think anyone who is being reasonable will see that those moderators were absolute garbage and continue to pretend they weren't fact-checking while they were fact-checking. So let's talk about the moderation first. The first area that I thought was hilarious, so the questions were all geared towards, being favorable to Walz. Not all of them, but most of them were. So, when it be economic question or, climate change questions, it wasn't just, what do you have to say about climate change? It's, this hurricane was made worse by climate change, and the experts agree, right? And stuff like that. One of the things I thought was hilarious was, it was very strategic of Vance to just say, listen, let's assume for the sake of argument that you're right, fossil fuel burning causes carbon emissions, which is responsible for all this. It's a very effective rhetorical strategy in a debate like this, where you have 2 or 1 minutes to talk about the topic, instead of trying to get into this lengthy argument. And it's a strategy that I employ a lot, which is, how do you win the argument through the path of least resistance? So how could you concede as many arguments of your opponents as possible and still win the argument? It's something that I've done, for example. Thanks so much, John Ruck, for the $2. Thank you. By the way, your money is always supported here. So John, maybe trend-setting, sending me money. Thank you. I'll take your money. It's tough in this Harris economy, so send me your money. I appreciate it. But it's in the vaccine debate, it's something that you've seen me do. Instead of arguing about, oh, well, this is what the VAERS database says, and this, I'm arguing against the mandate. So I say, let's just take a section of people that were mandated by the Harris-Biden administration to take this vaccine. People that had a previous COVID infection. Let's look at what the data at the time of the mandate was issued, what it said about those people. And I have people all the time say, but why didn't you debate about the VAERS database? And why didn't you debate about this? Because then you broaden the debate. And when you broaden the debate, you broaden the targets that your opponent have to be able to poke holes in your arguments. Whereas if you stay focused and concede as many of your opponent's arguments as possible and still win the argument, that's a very effective strategy, particularly when you have limited time. So it's actually a great answer to the climate change question, where you just said, okay, let's assume that you're right, that emissions cause this. Here's why our policies would still be better. And that's tremendous. But what you noticed after that, Vance never said carbon emissions don't cause climate change is a hoax. Doesn't say anything like that. But notice the very last word that the moderators get in before they change the subject. They're like, and just to say, scientists, there is a consensus that climate change is occurring and emissions are causing it. It was like they had that pre-planned to fact-check Vance. So that was already in their head that they were going to say that. They're like, oh, we're not going to fact check. We're not going to do that. We're just going to word the questions and say all this stuff. And then they come across as total dolts when they just say that. It's like, okay, what's that in response to? What are you talking about? Thanks so much, Achilles. Take my money. I will for $2. Thank you. And that just goes to show they were geared up. They tried to give the impression of like, well, we're not fact checking. That's not what we're doing. And then they went in with this pre-planned game plan that was basically de facto fact checking. And of course, the part that this really comes out is the question about illegal immigration. And Vance is talking about Haitians coming in, and he's like, they're sending these illegals. And Walz is, the moderators are like, well, they're not illegal. They came through the legal process. And Vance is like, listen, you said you weren't going to fact check, but if you are, allow me to retort. Oh, Surian says on X, did I say Walz got a 9.5? I meant, my mistake, Vance got a 9.5. Walz would have got, I misread the question. Sorry about that, Serena, if you're watching. I'll have to go and delete that tweet. That is not the intention that I had. And the moderators are like, yes, thank you for explaining the process of legal immigration. And basically Vance is making the good argument, which is, right, they find legal loopholes to bring all these people in from these countries and then fly them to areas that they want to remake the population of those areas. And then they say, but it's legal. That's legal immigration. Right, because you've intentionally done this and crafted loopholes to allow this sort of thing to occur. which, by the way, is the answer to the border bill that they keep saying that Trump sabotaged. There were so many loopholes in there that if you had an administration that intentionally wanted illegals to come in and wanted people from these countries to come in, they would take advantage of it, just like they did the Haitians. That's exactly the point. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat, Kinesis. Vance Pursuit and Andrew, let's just say you're right for the sake of argument. Sigma Chad moment, MAGA. Absolutely, absolutely true. So the moderation was just terrible. That was the worst part of it. Vance did a great job. I think Vance could have been a little more humorous about it. Vance could have been like, hey, during the break, can you all bring up a podium? You could stand next to him if you want. There's room there. He won't mind if you slide on it. Go ahead. We're used to it. We're used to the demonization. Or he could have later, when they were like, why did you originally say that Trump scared you? He could have, and he said, well, I believe media lies. He could have said, as you've exhibited here tonight, we know that you're all in for pro-establishment candidates and you despise Donald Trump. And one of the reasons you despise him was because how effective he was for advocating for regular working class Americans. And you don't like that. And we get that. You're not really journalists. You're just propaganda for the actual institutions that you want to see continue. Thank you so much, Menmock, for $5. I really appreciate it. First super chat and stream. Thank you so much. Now, maybe it's a mistake to go down that road because it gets him off the sort of track of more fruitful things because then they would go back and forth. And he did a sufficient job on that. I thought it was fine. It is the one area that I saw when there was a commercial break. I just checked X real quick to see what people were saying. And I did see some of the usual, Kamala supporters going, oh, Vance got hammered there. On what? He exhibited that he was debating 3 people, just like Trump was, and he gave a masterclass, in how to deal with them. So I had said that the agendas for both Vance and Walz were as follows. Let's start with Walz. If you go back and you watch my pre-debate show, this is what I said. I said Walz needs to stick to this. He needs to say that Trump is a threat to democracy and he's an unlikable person and he's a felon and all of this. How well did he do? Not really good. Not good at all. In fact, Walz really drops the ball on that. And I want to give a shout out because he said it before me. Jebtan, who's someone I've debated and who's debated with me on the show. He is a conservative who's not supporting Trump. He correctly calls out the attack there that the Trump ticket's this unique threat. Not only is that never really made too clear, at best you could say other than the January 6th topic, which I think Vance does a tremendous job of arguing against, other than that, it just seems like policy disagreements. There's some policy disagreements. Now, the abortion would be the only area that you could say, okay, he's saying that Trump's this unique threat, but he's not doing great. He sounded okay there, and he's doing good at humanizing it because he's talking about specific women that he claims were affected by the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And that's important for his audience. That humanizes it, just like when you talk about illegal immigration, and you could talk about specific people that were killed by illegal immigrants. That's powerful. And so Walz does a good job on that emotional aspect when he's talking about abortion. But he's not doing a good job of smearing Trump as this really radical person. In fact, as Jebtan says, notice how many times Walz was like, yeah, I sort of agree with a lot of what Vance is saying here. Now, that's probably true. Walz, as a human, probably is listening to some of what Vance is saying, yeah, that comes across as reasonable. However, perceptually, that's not good if the strategy that you're employing is these guys are insane monsters that are going to destroy this country. When you keep a grip, actually, what he's saying there is pretty reasonable. Now, he does try to differentiate himself and say, well, Trump's, says crazier stuff than Vance. He sort of implies that. But overall, the goal of smearing Trump as this sort of insanely radical person who's a felon, he doesn't do a good job of that. He does not. So he kind of makes the argument, but I would give him like a 3.5 out of 10 on that. There was so much more that they could have done. So that was the first thing. The second thing I said was he has to go hard on the abortion stuff. He does pretty good there. I'll give him like a 6 out of 10. Could have done better, but he does okay. It was one of the areas where I think Vance finally gets to talking about the Minnesota law, which is good. But remember, the initial question asked to Walz was, would you support any restrictions even at 9 months? And Walz is like, And then they ask him again, and he's like, And the moderators don't insist that he answers like they do with J.D. Vance. And Vance should have taken him to task. Be like, notice how he deflects. You see that? Just like, he can't tell you no. And then if you look at the law he keeps touting in Minnesota, well, it's allowed children that survived abortions to not be given care and die on the table. That shows the radical name. So Vance does a good job. He finally gets there, but I thought he could have made it more clear. Look, he won't answer the question. He won't do it. And that's the truth. But Walz does okay. He humanizes it. And let's be honest, Democrats are going to win with that. With the people that think abortion is the biggest issue, Democrats are going to win that. Because those people are going to be people that think the right to abortion, because Roe was overturned, is the biggest issue. People that are pro-life, they're probably not saying that's the biggest issue right now. They might be saying the economy, foreign policy, the border. So the more that they talk about abortion, the better. And, so I thought Walz did fine. He did okay. I'll give him a 5.5, 6 out of 10 on that. And then the other thing I said was, and this is where Walz fails, he gets a 0 out of 10 on this. I was shocked. This is live. I was shocked at how bad Tim Walz did on this topic. Because it's the number one thing that Vance needed to do. So this is a 10 out of 10 for Vance and a 0 out of 10 of Walz. The third thing I said Walz needed to do was differentiate how Kamala Harris has changed her mind and how she's not part of the Biden administration on certain things. I don't recall him even one time pushing back. Vance successfully, and this is, meta-wise, this is the most important thing. This is the most important thing as far as a strategy that was employed the entire debate. The most important thing in the Harris-Trump debate was Harris successfully baited Trump. She got him talking, she would just be like, blah, 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 and Trump, your crowd size isn't that big. And Trump would take that bait. The most important meta strategy thing that happened this whole debate, what Trump wanted to do to Harris, because she's avoiding the media, she's basically changed all of her policies but won't tell you why, and she's running a campaign of joy behind the scenes. He needed to label her, and that's what Vance did. Vance said, Harris has been there for 4 years. The Biden administration is the Harris administration. Thanks so much, MTW, for $10. Says, wonder if Walz gets the Biden treatment after that whooping. He won't. They can't get rid of him now, but that's funny. That is tremendous. Now, it wasn't just that Vance did a great job of sticking to that script. Trump's administration was good for the economy. Trump's administration good for healthcare. Trump's administration good for the border. Harris administration bad. Harris says she's going to change things. She's been there. Why hasn't she done it? He stuck to that theme the entire time. Walz needed to push back in some way. He does say, yeah, some of the stuff they do is good, but he lets Vance correctly, in my opinion, label the current 4-year term of Biden as the Harris term. That is tremendous. If there was no other issues on the table and voters are purely voting on Trump for 4 years versus Harris for 4 years, and we think Harris was in charge for 4 years, where was it better? Trump wins in a landslide. Easily. That's what this debate was about. That was the number one key I said for Vance, and he crushed it. And Walz never even once pushed back. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. I don't know what to say. Is there any doubt? You might come away thinking, if you watch that debate and you're trying to be as objective as possible, you may say, I think the Biden administration's been good for the economy. I think it's been good for the border. I think it's been good for foreign policy. You might say that. You're delusional, but you might say that. But if you're just looking at this debate, there is no question that the audience of this debate come away thinking, this last 4 years was Harris. It wasn't, well, she wasn't really calling the shots. She was just there to give the best input, and she did agree with some of what Biden said, but not all. And the reason she didn't pass these plans was she wasn't the president, so she could give input, but she wants to go further now that she'll be the person in charge. There was none of that. None. Absolutely none of it. So with Vance, I said the keys were, as I've already said, stick to the record of Trump versus the record of Harris, and label Harris as being the Biden administration. He does that phenomenally, 10 out of 10. That was the most important thing that he could do. Remember when I debated on the Hippy Dippy panel, me, Andrew Wilson, the Turk, Gibbs, versus Pisco, Joe Lewis, I'm Really Important, and Hutch. What did I say all through that debate? I told people my strategy going in. I told people in my opening statement of that debate, I said, this debate will be about the record of Kamala Harris versus the record of Donald Trump. My opponents will try to shift to be like, Trump's a felon, Trump's a rapist, Trump's a racist, Trump's a threat to democracy because they cannot defend the record. I'm not taking the bait. We're going to talk about the record. That's what the American people care about. That's exactly what J.D. Vance did. Exactly what he did. And it was phenomenal. He did an absolutely amazing job at that. He stuck to their records. And Walz was unable. He did not take the bait very much for Walz. He also did it in a way, and the other thing I said, that he was going to have to explain sort of his statements criticizing Trump. He does a great job. He gives an answer to it and then moves back to that record issue. It's great. He did a great job of taking the direction, to the questions to the direction he wanted, but also giving substantive answers to the question. So a lot of times in the Harris-Trump debate, it was true. They would ask a question and there was basically not even an attempted response to the question. Very few times did that happen with Vance. It happened more with Walz, but very few times with Vance. And the moderators kept needling him on it. He did phenomenal. He absolutely did. The other thing that I talked about, and this was also phenomenal, I'm going to ask you all a question right now. Please try to be objective as possible. All of us are biased. I get that. But try to pretend that that these people weren't VPs. They're just running for, they're the presidential candidates, or it's a governor race or something. And you didn't know anything about them. I'm going to ask you straight up, who comes across as more likable? Forget about their policy differences. Just, if you were like, that guy seems down to earth and likable, who came across as more likable? John Ruck thinks Tim did. I disagree completely. I thought Tim came across as likable. Walz came across as likable. But it was clearly J.D. Vance, in my opinion. Vance was, I'm sorry to hear that about your child. And first, I just want to thank everyone for being here. And this terrible tragedy of Helene, he kept talking about his children. Walz even kept saying, I agree with a lot of things he was saying. I think Vance looked more professional. He wasn't as stilted. He didn't come across as nervous. He was polished. And he didn't come across as swarmy. He didn't come across as arrogant. He seemed down to earth. That's huge. Now, it's not as huge as the first part I said, that what this debate was about was reminding the American people, Harris is literally, the Harris strategy is to run as the candidate of change. We need to change directions in this country. And they're getting away with it to some degree. And to the best of his ability, J.D. Vance was like, change? You've been there for 4 years. This is your policies. But secondary to that was the attacks on Vance he's this quirky, weird person that's not relatable. I didn't see that at all on stage today. I didn't see it at all. The viral moments of the debate. Easily the most viral moment is the one difficult question they asked of Walz. He has no response. Where it's like, okay, you lied about the Tiananmen Square thing. Now the first half of it's fine. Right? The first half of that's like, look, let me explain my life. I'm like you. And that's fine. That's great. But it doesn't really answer the question like, dude, you lied about this. And the moderators, to their credit, this one time, were like, yeah, but you didn't really answer the question. And he just like pauses. He's like, I answered. I misspoke. I mean, that's devastating. Now, there's two ways that Vance could have gone about this. And I think this leads to him being more likable. One is as he did, which he basically doesn't hammer on it, which is fine. That's absolutely fine. Remember I said, both these candidates, because this is the last chance to sort of label who this ticket is and who your opponent's ticket is, they need to focus more on not attacking each other, but attacking the presidential candidates. So Vance should be attacking Harris, which he does phenomenally. And to Walz's credit, he spends more time attacking Trump than he does Vance, which is smart. That's what he should be doing. So Vance is just like, basically lets it go because it's not really worth attacking Walz on this. And he even sort of chuckles later when he's like, yeah, I know about misspeaking, I understand. So he humanized, like, to me, that came across as very magnanimous. Vance isn't like spiking the ball on this. He could have. And the one area that I haven't seen from either of these debates is the fact that the entire Democratic ticket and Democratic Party and the media lied about Biden's cognitive decline. And I think that the way I would have answered that is like, no, listen, I understand that sometimes in the heat of the moment you get hyperbolic and misspeak, but this is indicative of the Harris-Walz ticket, where all of a sudden they claim to care about things that Harris hasn't cared about in 3.5 years, such as the border, such as all these housing policies, but they didn't do anything for 3.5 years. And they seem to misspeak a lot, like when they misspoke over and over again by not telling us about Biden's cognitive decline until after he was the de facto nominee, so that the Democratic voters didn't have a chance to have a say in who the nominee would be. So it wouldn't have taken that much time, but, you know. But I do think Walz is likable. He comes across as folksy, like I said beforehand. I don't walk out of that debate thinking, Walz is this extreme rat. I don't get that. From what I saw on the debate stage, I'll have to admit, like, listen, I'm voting for Trump. But does anyone deny, if you're anyone that's kind of, let me just put it this way. Aren't there a lot of people that are going to walk out of that and say, I kind of wish these two were the top of the ticket? Don't you think there's going to be a lot of people saying that? Like, wow, look how polished and sort of professional Vance is. And Walz seems better than Kamala Harris. He seems like a relatable. You think he seems dislikable? I didn't. I thought he seemed quite likable. Nervous. And so I think, and you saw that a lot, I think, with the Mike Pence debate back in 2016. I know there were a lot of people like, oh, Pence seems presidential. Now, Trump brings something different to the ticket. He brings this enthusiasm and inciting a base that I don't know that J.D. Vance at this point in his career could do. But I'm just saying, just that performance, yeah, I agree with that, by the way, that people were giving Walz crap for flipping off Trump supporters. Trump flipped off someone the other day, and I kind of don't mind that. I didn't mind Walz flipping off a Trump supporter. That's human. But that was the most viral moment, in my opinion. The second most viral moment that I put before that, what was it? I can't remember what the other was, so it must not have been that viral. But, you know, for me, policy-wise, I thought that the most masterful redirection in this debate, clearly the theme of connecting Harris to Biden's administration is the most important thing Vance did. But Vance's answer to January 6th was very polished. Very polished. First, he starts off and says, look, I want to focus on the future. I care about you can't afford your groceries. But if you want me to answer, I will. And he's like, yeah, we think there were problems, but Trump did leave. He told people to be peaceful. The only part of it he should, well, that's all fine. And then, you know, once Walz responds, oh, it was a threat, you know, he makes the argument, Vance makes the argument, look, you guys didn't accept the results of elections. Hillary still says 2016 was stolen. And then he says the real threat to democracy is censorship. Now, he could have added in there, and the fact that you hid Joe Biden's cognitive decline, so there wasn't a real primary, so Democratic voters didn't have a say. But that's fine. Maybe that's branching out too much. He stays focused. That censorship redirection was phenomenal. And the viral moment that is absolutely shocking is, am I wrong that Tim Walz was like, yeah, we're for censorship? Well, you can't say fire in a crowded theater. And Vance correctly is like, you guys censored people for saying kids shouldn't wear masks. It wasn't yelling fire in a crowded theater. Walz isn't like, no. Absolutely crushing. Now, most people, that's not going to be their biggest issue. For me, it is. For me, this corruption and censorship and intel agencies colluding with free speech, the sort of stuff Mike Benz talks about all the time, that is the biggest issue. Most people are concerned about their groceries, their rent, their mortgage, the border, the cusp of World War III. But on that issue of democracy, unreal. Toxic Mix, thanks so much for the $10. I think JD's stumble was not pointing at those loopholes in the border bill. I expect Trump to fail there, but I hope JV would say it. Found you a while back, liking the balanced analysis. Thanks, Toxic. Yeah, well, remind me. We'll get to the border bill stuff here in a second. I thought he could have had a slightly better answer there. But I could not believe that Walz was just like, wow. And I think that for the average person that's maybe like, well, yeah, January 6th wasn't very good. Maybe that is a threat to democracy. I think they're going to be shocked that the Democrats are like, yeah, we want to censor you. Yeah. Over COVID. The border bill. Yes, that's where Tim Walz that's the Democrat strategy. Well, this border bill. Yeah, I thought J.D. Vance could have had a nice 15 seconds. Now, I understand that he's narrowly tailored, and he's making the best argument, which is, dude, you were there for 4 years. He could have made this a little more succinct. You're there for 4 years. You rescinded all of Trump's policies. It's about letting law enforcement do their job. You guys were against that. That's why the border is a disaster. Under Trump, it was secure. Under Harris, it's wide open. That's the best answer. MT, thank you so much again for $10. Says, can't wait to see all the delusional left-wing streamers coping real hard. Yeah, I already saw Pisco doing it. Funny stuff. So that's, but he could have been like, and look, with this border bill, basically what it did was entrenched allowing 5,000 a day to come to the border, giving NGOs that are helping these illegals get here millions upon millions of dollars, having loopholes specifically for Mayorkas and other people in the Harris administration to allow these people in, just like they're saying, oh, the Haitians that we flew into Springfield, they were all legal. Those are the sort of loopholes that would be available. And it would have entrenched that into law so that when we win, we would have had a more difficult time rescinding that law. It wouldn't have been hard to point that out. Thanks so much, Intel Wild, for the $20. It says, Rob, with a bunch of emojis. Thank you. I appreciate the exclamation points. Am I worth 4 exclamation points? I think so. My wife would only give me 2, though, if I'm honest. So he could have done a better job, but ultimately I think it rings hollow. People have heard this argument over and over again. And he could have even made the argument like this. This is the Harris administration. 2021, border secure. 2022, border secure. 2023, border secure. 2024. The border's a disaster. It's Trump's fault. Why didn't you do anything for 3 years? The other thing was, there were other little chances where Walz was actually giving the answer that Vance could have pointed out more. For example, when he says, well, why didn't Trump get the wall passed? He said he was going to get the wall passed, but he didn't when he was president. He should have been like, well, that's because people in Congress like Kamala Harris said walls were racist, and they had one of the longest government shutdowns in history to prevent that wall. That's why he didn't get it passed. Oh, now she wants to build a racist wall, right? Because it's an election year. So now she's pretending to care. That's what he should have said. That would have been a good argument. Another argument was when they were talking about housing, and Tim Walz said, look, we're doing very good in Minneapolis. One of the things we did was cut red tape. Vance sort of makes this argument, but he could have made it specific. Absolutely, Tim Walz, you're absolutely right. In fact, one of the reasons we have stagnating economy under Kamala Harris is because of the mass amount of regulation, something that Trump not only did, but is promising to rescind many of these regulations. Just like you said, cutting red tape's important. Thank you. Those are the sorts of arguments that could have been taken to the next level. But again, hindsight's 2020. I can't tell you had I been there that I would have picked up on this stuff in real time. But you're always trying to use your opponent's arguments against them. So I thought that there was some room there. And of course, the biggest missed opportunity, I think, was when they were talking about January 6th and Walz mentions police officers being harmed. Vance should have been like, Walz, you supported the defund the police movement when far more officers were being hurt around the country and actually killed in some cases, unlike January 6th, by BLM rioters, which you paid lip service to. Kamala Harris promoted a bail fund after they burned down a police station. So I'm sorry, it comes across as a little hollow. Trump telling a group of people to be peaceful is somehow a threat to democracy, but Kamala Harris pushing a bail fund for violent rioters after they burned down a police precinct, and that's supposedly all good? I thought that was a missed opportunity, that he could have brought that up. But this is really quibbling over just little things. And I predicted, I put out a post on X to speak to you, Jimmy Beam. The left is going to know that on substance, Walz lost this debate. They're going to know perceptually he loses because Vance comes across as far more polished. And they know when it comes to the substantive issues on default, if you're objective, Vance wins pretty handily. So they're going to do the same thing they did in the debate where I handily beat them on the panel with Pisco and I'm Really Important and Hutch. Thanks so much, Roar89, for $5. Says, hearing the left say Walz destroyed Vance's, well, I don't know what they watched. It was interesting to see a non-Trump debate, though. Vance is a fine debater. He is. Of course, you knew they were going to do that, though. So what was I talking about? I got distracted by the money being sent to me. Money, yeah. We were talking about, so what's the left going to do? The same thing they did in that debate. They can't defend the record, so they're going to be like, but January 6th! So to them, that's going to be the biggest issue. Well, Vance didn't say if the election was stolen. Vance didn't say if he would certify. Who gives a shit? You think the person that's right now undecided gives a shit? The only people that care about, it's the same with the Russia. They always have some issue like that. Canisius, thanks so much for the $2. Rob, you taking calls tonight? I can't. I'm on my phone, so I can't take calls. Tomorrow night, I could take calls if that's what people want. We could talk about the debate and other issues, and we could take calls. I haven't done a call-in show, so maybe we'll plan on that tomorrow night. Do a call-in show, but can't tonight, unfortunately. So yeah, that's what January 6th. That was the big issue. That was the viral moment. But it's just like the Russia shit. The people that were going to vote against Trump for January 6th. Do you think there was more red meat for them? You think there was anyone undecided today that watched that and went, "Oh my God, Vance's answer to January 6th. Well, that's it." Do you think? Not a chance. Vance's answer was quite reasonable. Of course, we had disagreements, but Trump handed over power. He told people to be peaceful. That's what we want, peaceful. We don't want to censor people like our opponents. I understand the people that want to January 6th. Sure. That's what they want to talk about because they can't defend the economy, the border, the foreign policy disasters, the censorship. Roar89 for $5 says, I bet the independents favor Vance. Just my opinion, but I think so. Vance made a good scene. Yeah, it wasn't really that close. I'm actually, if I had to criticize myself a little, I said that I can't remember. You know, the letter grades are sort of difficult anywhere, but I predicted anywhere from like a B+ to an A- for Vance. I think he exceeded expectations. I think I give him an A. I think he won easier than I expected. And I think it was close enough as I predicted. I mean, you even had Democrats trying to say Biden won that debate against Trump. Not a lot, but even that, which was the worst presidential debate performance I've ever seen. And there were still Democrats like, well, Trump lied too much and blah, blah, blah. So, of course, there was nothing that the people that are already Democratic mouthpieces, they're going to say, Walz did great. J.D. Vance lied. Fact check, fact check. Walz lost perceptually. Walz, in my opinion, lost on likability, but I'll be honest and say that's the closest. I can understand someone saying they thought Walz was more likable. And Walz lost on the facts. He just did. And I think most people that are undecided or are sort of neutral, that was clear to see. Intel Wild for $5 says, Walz didn't come close to winning tonight. Nope, he didn't. And before people say, you're a homer, you're biased. I am a homer. I'm biased. I'm voting for Trump Vance. I like Vance a lot. But I said Harris won the first debate, even when a lot of people in my audience said I'm nuts. I argued with them many times. So although you're right, I'm biased, and it's hard to judge yourself and be introspective yourself and say, is my bias causing me to say something that I wouldn't if I'm objective? It's difficult to do that. But at least my track record shows I'm willing to say when I thought the other side won a debate. So I don't think I'm just saying, oh, I'm always going to say my side wins. I'm not. How much does this move the needle? Remains to be seen. I think that this will, ultimately at the end of the day, I don't know that this is enough to swing the election one way or the other. But it's definitely a stamp right now. This is the last time that these two campaigns are going to directly interact with each other. And the bookend on that is a clear Trump-Vance victory. And I think that Vance maybe has done enough to assuage people that might think Trump's a little too unhinged. He seems like a calm, cool, collected guy that would be some degree of calming influence, much like a lot of people thought about Mike Pence. Mike Pence was sort of this calming figure, and so a lot of people that thought, well, Trump's this sort of like fly-off-the-cuff maniac, but here's this guy's VP that'll sort of rein him in a little. I think that Vance is far more closely aligned with the Trump agenda than Pence ever was, but I think he does bring a lot of that calmingness as well. You know, Vance could have maybe made the claim about Walz being connected to China, but I think the strategy was to come across as positive and likable. And he did. He didn't have a lot of negative attacks on Walz at all. At all. And so, you know, my wife says, that's exactly what I told you. You came out tonight looking calm and likable, two things that are not always associated with Trump. Yeah, I agree. And even on, like, I was talking, my wife texted me a little, I didn't get a chance to respond to her, but like the question of, you have to understand, I'm a small government person. I hesitate to have the government have regulations and stuff. So the question of, should the government force companies to give paid maternity leave? It's a difficult one, because on one hand, I'm like, well, if you choose to work for an employer and he doesn't, and that employer doesn't give you that, you could work elsewhere. But I also understand the importance of that, particularly watching my family go through it. My wife was full-time employed when she was pregnant until very late in the pregnancy, and she went back quite early. We quickly realized that was a mistake, and I worked more hours because I think that the most important job in the world is being a mom and being there with your child, and it's also the most difficult job in the world, so easy for me to work extra hours to leave her have that difficult job back home. I never tell her that, though. I'm like, oh, I work all the time, blah, blah, blah. But man, I remember at the time just being like, man, it's crazy. You only get like so little maternity leave. That's crazy. And my wife, I think my wife's going to vote for Trump. You know, I'm pretty confident of that. But I don't think she would say, oh, Trump's really good on, you know, family policies like that. She was impressed with Vance's answer. Thanks, Roar89. Thanks so much for the $2. After Trump, I'll never vote for anyone over 50. And so, I mean, that's good. I think his answer was good. It's all about the idea of choice and the one-size-fits-all policy of Harris is leaving people left behind. And some women want to immediately go back to work, and some want to spend a little time at home, and some want to spend a lot. And the current Harris policies doesn't differentiate for those options. And we need to have... I thought that was brilliant. And even with the more antagonistic questions that the audience was answering, for example, they were like, well, Trump said that healthcare is not that expensive and you'll be bringing in more money. What do you say about that? And Vance very quickly is like, oh, no, what he was saying was we'll be bringing in more money by sort of protecting American businesses and bringing in more revenue. And so we'll be able to do things like maternity leave and giving more money to the American people. It's brilliant. The only time Walz was asked a difficult question like that was sort of, what about this Tiananmen Square business? Perhaps, Joseph, there's questions about paid maternity leave. Don't get me wrong. Some people suggest paid paternity and what do you call it, for the man. TDL version, A for Vance, C to C minus for Walz. Vance successfully labeled, the most important part of the debate is Vance, almost with zero pushback, labeled the current administration the Harris administration. And continually said, basically, Harris is running as a candidate of change. She's been there 3.5 years. Why hasn't she done any of this? The record on Trump was better than the record of Harris. The economy was better. The border was better. Foreign policy was better. Walz was nervous. He still did better than Harris, in my opinion, but he was just slightly below average. Vance was pretty exceptional. So, anything else specific that people wanted to talk about? Yeah, Vance could have done better on the border bill. But again, you have to pick and choose. You don't have time to make every argument. And there's always a chance to sit back. How many people really do you think right now are sort of undecided voters and they're like, I think the border is an issue that I'm concerned with. Oh, I think there was this bill and Trump sabotaged it, so I'm not going to vote for him. I think I trust Harris more on the border. I mean, it could have helped, I guess. Yeah, and then clearly there are things. Look, I know this. Even when I think I do really well in a debate, I have you a-holes that are always like, you could have said this, you could have said this, and half the time you're right. It's like, yeah, I could have said that. So even when someone does a really good debate performance, it's easy to say there are things they left on the table, and that's true. But when you're in that moment, sometimes it's not so easy, particularly when you have antagonistic moderators. It sometimes becomes difficult. And a lot of times the way the questions would work, it would be like, they'll ask Vance a question, and then they'll be like, Walz, care to respond? And then they'll ask Walz a question, and Vance is like chomping at the bit to respond, and they're like, well, we have a different question for you. Walz, care to respond? And then they're basically fact-checking, and it makes it difficult because one of the things, I'm sure that this happened, they were like, oh, one of the criticisms of Trump in his debate was sometimes he wouldn't directly answer the question. So do your best to directly answer the question and then spend 15, 20 seconds directly answering the question, and then your remaining minute 45 sort of taking it to the direction you want to go. I'm sure that was the plan. And an effective debater could do that. Like, oh yeah, when it comes to paternity leave, that is something that I would recommend, and it's something that we'll be looking at because right now it's very difficult. We think that having children is important, and we think if we're going to be pro-life, that means making it easier to have families. But one of the things that also is important is we have to be able to afford groceries. We have to be able to afford homes. We have to have safe communities, and we can see the disastrous immigration policies of Kamala Harris and inflationary policies have made this difficult for everyone. You see, you answer the question directly, and then you take it back to hitting them on the area where you're most strong. And I think Vance is doing a pretty good job of that. There was only like one time where, it was like, did you directly answer that? Anyone out there that thinks Walz won? Oh, that's another thing that I wanted to say. Finally, it was only a small part of the debate, but I thought it was important. One of the groups that you should be trying to court as a voter or as a candidate is RFK. RFK's endorsement of Trump's actually very important. Even if he was only ever going to get 1% to 2% of the vote, that could literally be the difference in some swing states. And so it was nice for, who did Walz in his closing statement? He's like, we're proud to have the endorsement of Taylor Swift. Vance is like, we have RFK. We have Tulsi Gabbard, specifically when talking about censorship and democracy. Alexander says, I'm voting for Harris, but I didn't like Walz's performance. Yeah, I think that that'll be a common, people that are honest on the left could say that. Look, I said the same, let me throw you an olive branch. I said the same about Trump's performance in the first debate. I'm still voting for Trump, but I didn't like his performance. But no one watching thinks that Walz won. I mean, it's pretty hard to defend. I know right now there's left-wing channels, Pisco's channel and Destiny's channel, if they're talking about the debate right now, they're gaslighting their audience, and their audience is all like, Walz won easily, January 6th, threat to democracy. But I think almost anyone who's remotely objective would say, yeah, perceptually and on the facts, J.D. Vance won. Yeah, I saw Pisco say, Vance did debate bro tactics to look good, but Walz won on substance. There's someone, Logan says, I don't think Walz won, but I think he appeared far more reasonable person than he actually is. I think that's true. I think that Walz came across as pretty likable. And how much of that is because he wasn't really attacked at all by Vance? And I think that that was part of the Vance strategy. Look, one of the things I said looking back at the Trump-Harris debate was the area of defense that Trump needs to play is he's already got the people that like the Rosie O'Donnell jokes. He's already got the people that like the memes. He's got to convince people, the election's basically coming down to the undecideds is this. I like the policies of Trump more than the policies of Harris, at least their record. But Trump's a prick. Is he a threat to democracy? Is he just too boorish? Is he too much of a jerk? And so Trump needed to come across as, he can't be like, well, I don't know if you're really black or not. Stupid woman. Like, the jokes like that weren't going to work. Because who does that add? Yeah, his base is going to be like, yeah, hilarious. Woo. Sure, Icor. Oh, thanks. It's not going to help with the new people that he needs to get in his side. Similarly, I think that probably the strategy that Vance and his team came up with was, look, we want to come across as very reasonable and likable. It's okay to attack Harris's record, but we don't want like personal jokes. Like, don't hammer Walz on like the tampon Tim thing. Don't hammer Walz on like, you lied, stolen valor. Just don't touch it. Because what's that really getting you at this point? You want to come across as magnanimous. You want to come across as likable. Talk about your children. Talk about your, say, yeah, Walz agrees with me in some of this. Sorry about, the troubles your family faced. And so I think that a lot of that strategy, when you're focused on that, you choose to, to concede that that's going to make your opponent look more normalized. Because unless Walz just starts doing unhinged stuff himself, there's really no reason for it. Vance chose to sort of bring down the tone. And, but I do agree with, Walz doesn't come across as super unreasonable, other than like that, like abortion plan, like, well, let's talk about the Minnesota law. Oh, that was the other viral moment. What's Tim Walz's answer to that? What about that Minnesota law that says if a child survives an abortion, they're basically just left there with no care to die? And Walz is like, that's been fact-checked, no. What? It's not an answer. So the terrible moderators from before fact-checked it? Roar, thanks so much for $5. Says, after Trump, I'm done voting for anyone over 55 without kids. They don't care about the future. They'll be done before they have to pay for their decision. Fair enough. You say that, but what if it's like a, Chelsea Clinton versus, someone who's 55 without kids, But I get what you're saying in general. But yeah, ultimately, I didn't think the debate was that close. It wasn't a blowout to the level of the Biden-Trump debate. But Vance gets an A. He was very good. Yeah, that abortion, he's just wrong. There are children. He repealed the law that you had to report how many children that were born were left to die. Some of those children were terminal, but I think there was 5 that weren't given care after they survived abortion. And he's just like, that's not true. It is true. That's been fact-checked, not true. Let's see how good the fact-checkers are on this, right? Another thing, Vance could have said at one point, Walz was like, when talking about abortion, dangerous Project 2025. It wouldn't have taken much time for Vance to just be like, we don't support Project 2025. They've even admitted we had nothing to do with it. Oh, but the Heritage Foundation that came up with it, one of their founders just endorsed Kamala Harris. Interestingly enough. I guess the better line on that would have just been like, look, they say Project 2025. It's just a lie. We know what a Trump presidency would look like because we had one, and it was great. And just like they fear-mongered going into 2016, Trump will cause World War III. He's going to lock up all the people he doesn't like. He'll go after his political opponents. He didn't. So now they're making up another boogeyman. 2025, Project 20. It's a lie. That was the other thing. The big miss that I thought Vance could have had. I mean, Walz actually made the argument Trump might try to lock up his political opponents. How hard would it have been for Vance to just been like, once more projection, that's what you're doing right now. You're using lawfare in as many ways as possible to go after Donald Trump. And you're worried that he'll retaliate. But that's not what he did in 2016 to his first term. He didn't. He got to business. The economy was going great. The border was running great. Foreign policy was running great. And unfortunately, Vance didn't get a chance to elaborate when he's going back and forth on healthcare. Because Vance was, I think, had a great point that he was going to make. He's like, so wait, you support that mandate? And I think what Vance would have said was, you heard that, young people. Remember when you used to get taxed, have to pay a penalty if you didn't have insurance? That's where, all of you people, that's where Walz wants to go back. That's what he wants to do. He wants to go back to the mandate. He wants back to punishing you if you don't do what they say. Why mess with the current system that, albeit true, that there are many problems that we could tweak, but why take it back to that was worse under Obama, when Obamacare was actually better under Trump once he removed the mandate? So all of you young people out there that are going to, remember, a vote for Harris Walz means that you're going to be paying a penalty every year on your taxes because now you're young and healthy and you don't use health insurance that much. Well, you're going to be forced to do it. Yeah, Walz did say he was friends with school shooters. I know what he meant, though. But yes, it's funny. If it was Trump that said something like that, it would be a viral moment. And another thing that, that was another area that Vance could have said. They keep saying, we're going to get rid of Obamacare. We're going to do this. Your pre-existing conditions won't be covered. None of that was true. Trump's been president for 4 years. None of that happened. We're not running on any of that. But Kamala Harris did promise to ban your private health insurance. That's what she ran on. That's their plan, to ban private insurance. Put the ball back in their court and force them to be like, no, that's not what we're going to do. Overall, though, I thought tremendous performance by J.D. Vance. Walz did slightly below average. Easy win, I think, for Vance. What was that? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank Vance? I would give him a 9.5, a 9 to a 9.5. You give him a 7? I completely disagree. 7's like a B? A B minus? I guess 7's a C. 7 out of 10's a C. I give him a 9 to a 9.5. There were things left on the table, but it's hard in the moment. And I thought what was their goals? What did I say? The number one goal of J.D. Vance is to label, the Harris administration has been hidden. The media is running cover for them. They're all about joy. What will Harris's policies be? We don't know. She's changing her policies, but her values are the same. What does that mean? Well, there's no question if you watch this debate tonight what the policies of Harris will be. The failed Biden policies are her policies. Without any pushback whatsoever. None. Walz didn't push back at all. Tremendous performance. That was the most important thing that could have been done. He did it also while coming across as quite affable. CNN basically admitting Walz lost. I can't bring things up because I'm on the phone. So I'll be interested. I'm going to look at some of that. So I will be streaming tomorrow evening. I hope you all enjoyed this debate review. Now, I have to say, there are certain people that I respect in the debate circle. Not the debate circle you all know, but people that were involved in collegiate debate that I know were better than me. One of them is the great Phil Kerpen. If you're not following Phil Kerpen on X, you're really making a mistake. I think he's one of the most underrated sort of journalists / commentators out there. He's a tremendous guy. That's Phil, spelled as you would think, and Kerpen, Kerpen. If you look him up on X, he is one of the best people talking about sort of hospital underutilization, problems with the vaccine mandate and stuff like that. But Phil was a tremendous debater, tremendous debater, better than I was. And he was in the coaching and judging sphere by the time I got into debate. Yep, that's how you spell it, John Ruck. He gave the moderators an F-. I would disagree slightly. I would give them an F+, because they weren't as bad as the ABC moderators. They're pretty bad, but not that bad. And then he gave Vance an A, which I concur. That's what I give Vance. And he gave Walz a D. And I was like, well, I gave Walz a C, but I'll go with Kerpen. I trust Kerpen more than me. And Kerpen said, I wouldn't quibble with a C. But that's about it. C to D range for Walz. Below average. Not as bad as Harris. Not as bad as... I thought Harris grade was inflated because she did what she had to. But just coming across, like... So I think Walz would beat Harris in a debate. But he is outclassed. And, look, debate's one thing. That doesn't mean It's not the end-all be-all, obviously. We'll see what sort of momentum comes from this. I'll be honest, I'll do a little doomer pill stuff here for a second. I don't know that any of it matters. I don't know if you guys ever heard of ballot harvesting. We'll see. A lot of people are pointing to polls and saying it seems like Trump's outperforming. Even polls that have Trump losing still has him doing better than he was doing versus Biden in 2020. And if he only lost by about 40,000 votes in 3 swing states in 2020, well, if he's 2 or 3 points better now than he was then, that seems to be very favorable. I don't know, though. I don't put much hope in those polls. I'm still, anything could happen. I think this is all of these disasters coming up right now at the beginning of October, bad for Harris. I think that this debate's bad for Harris. The momentum seems to be going with Trump, but ballot harvesting. And there's going to be more scandals and stuff. There's going to be more stuff that comes out. There's a solid chance that some of the negative stories you're seeing now seem to alleviate before Election Day. Maybe the union ends their strike. So my advice to you is, I'll admit here is a bias I have. I'm always pessimistic. That Steve Rinella quote I talk about all the time. Be pessimistic with your head, but optimistic with your feet. That's always how I like to approach things. The old football mentality. Always have a chip on your shoulder. Always make yourself believe you're the underdog. And that's how I approach things. In my head, I'm thinking that. So with my actions, with my feet, that makes me want to work even harder. So don't be complacent. Even if you think that Trump's going to win, I still don't. I don't think they'll let him win. But I'm going to bust my ass doing almost everything I can within this. Well, I can't say that. Within the scope of remaining employed and taking care of my family obligations, I'm going to try to do my best to get people out there, get people registered to vote, get people to the polling places, encouraging people to vote for Trump. I'm going to do my best to do that. Because certainly if we don't do that, then there's no hope. So if you think Trump's winning, in your head tell yourself he's losing by 5 percentage points. We got to work even harder. Don't get complacent. It's one of the problems I saw in 2020. I was talking to all the people that followed me back then. I was talking to all these other right-wing streamers. Trump's going to win 48 states. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's going to be close. But it's a good news day for Trump. J.D. Vance did his job. Vice president's good for 2 things. 1, helping you get elected. And 2, helping you once you're elected. I think Vance proved he's very good in the former today. This debate performance, arguably, because it is the last chance, because there's no presidential debate after this. The bookend on this is clear victory in the debates for Trump, Vance over Harris, Walz. And that's the last debate. That's the last taste that people will get of this. And I think that's very good. And I think one of the things you'll see is you'll see Kamala Harris begging for another debate. That's going to be the big narrative coming out of this. January 6th stuff, that's going to be, J.D. Vance, he wouldn't certify the election. He still says the election's stolen. And Trump's running from the debate. Trump's running from another debate with Harris. You watch and see. They're going to come out guns a-blazing with that. They are. And that just goes to show you, Vance did very well tonight. Thanks, I appreciate that, Thomas Santos. I really do. So, and I understand that there's going to be a lot of people, left-wing commentators on these spaces, like Pisco, that are saying Vance lost, Walz won. All I'll say for my track record compared to them, I'm willing to admit when I think my candidate lost a debate, like I said last time with Trump, I thought Trump lost that debate, much to the chagrin of many of the people that watch me. All I can do is be authentic. That's all I can do. I have a bias. We all do. But all I can do is tell you authentically what I really believe. If I just sit here and tell the audience what they want to hear, what the hell good am I? So I'm giving you my honest opinions, which is all I can do. Understand, if I was just rah, 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 Trump's the best, Trump everything all the time, I would have a bigger audience. But I can't do that. It's not who I am. And it's one of the reasons I'm very appreciative of the audience I have, because I'll disagree with my audience. I really will. I'll criticize Trump. I'll criticize politicians like Thomas Massey, who I really like. I'll criticize Rand Paul. I will. All I can do is be myself. Just take the Russian money, says Aftershock. Conservative carnage. You want me to review that Viva debate tomorrow? Probably not. I don't know when I'll get around to that, because the problem is people want to do a call-in and they're going to want to talk about this debate. So I'll probably do call-ins tomorrow. People like Bisco, remember, these are the same people that lied to you about Biden's cognitive decline. They lied to you. Do you think they're going to give an honest assessment? You think? You remember after the Biden-Trump debate, when I called into Wick's show, and Wick was, they're all, and I was like, fuck you people, you lied about this dude's cognitive decline. Oh, we didn't lie, blah, blah, blah. So that's what they're going to gaslight their audience into believing. That's fine. Who did Rob say won? Easily Vance. Vance gets an A. Walz gets a C to a C minus. Easy victory for Vance. So, all right. Game plan is tomorrow evening at some point, I will be streaming. Maybe we'll do a call-in show. Maybe not. Oh, Charleroi. I would love to get there. We'll see, man. My work schedule is brutal here, at least until mid-October. Streaming Wednesday night, streaming Thursday, and then I will not be streaming Friday. I have some family and some friends coming over that are going to be staying at our house. There's this festival in the town I live in where they have like a parade and they have a craft day. And so I got a lot of friends that are coming in for that. And they'll be spending the night at my place Friday night, so I won't be able to stream. Thomas Massey's probably my favorite politician in Congress. So we'll see what we can. Maybe I'll get a debate set up for Thursday. We'll see. But good night for Trump's team. Vance cleans up. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hope my commentary both before and after. Look, hold my feet to the fire. Go back and watch my pre-debate show. See how well my prediction was. I think it was very spot on. I think that hopefully I'm confident that I'm a good debater and I'm giving good suggestions. I gave good suggestions for Tim Walz's team too. And I think that J.D. Vance, it's not that J.D. Vance listened to me, but I think I was spot on with what Vance's plan was. Stick to the records. Trump's record, all the fear-mongering about Trump, we saw him for 4 years, things were great. We saw Harris for 4 years, things are terrible. That's it. And I thought that that was done remarkably. So, all right, thanks so much, everyone. Thank you especially to the people that financially donated. If there's 174 people listening, if you can give me a thumbs up if you like this commentary, even if you don't agree with me, I'd appreciate it. It helps me on the algorithm. Soon, I will get to 10,000 subs on YouTube, which is a remarkable achievement for me. So we'll have a big party and a big special stream for that. So look forward to that soon. I'm getting rapidly close to it. And then, of course, I got the big 24-hour stream before the election. That's looking like it's going to be the Saturday before voting. So that'll be like November 2nd. We're going to do a 24-hour stream. I got a bunch of guests. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll get all that taken care of. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll be streaming on all of my platforms tomorrow night. So not just YouTube here, but Twitch, Rumble, X, and Kick. And hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks so much, everyone. As always,